guys, welcome back to my show. In today's episode, we have a very special author with us today. Her name is Kristi Wientge. Hi Kristi, how are you today?
Hi Anika, I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure to have you on today. So could you please introduce yourself and give a brief book synopsis of your latest book?
Yes. Well, as you said, my name is Kristi Wientge. I write books for middle grade, and I have 3 books out. They are all about friendship, and my latest one is Best Friends, Bikinis, and Other Summer Catastrophes. The main character in this book, her name is Alex, and her best friend is Will, and they've been best friends since kindergarten. And as you can probably tell from the title, because of bikinis and all that, it's a summer book. So they have lots of plans for the summer. But Will decides he has a crush on someone. So Alex is not having the best summer because her best friend now likes other girls. So it gets pretty complicated.
That sounds like a very interesting book. Everyone who's listening to this episode, please be sure to check out this book and all the other books Kristi has written. They're amazing, and be sure to check them out because they're out in local bookstores. You can get them from Amazon and the library. I'll be linking her books and her website in the podcast description, so you can click on those links and find out more about Kristi. Okay, so my next question for you is, where do you get your inspiration for these books you write?
Yeah, so it's funny. Khullar's Mustache, my first book, the inspiration for that was actually because I wanted to read that book when I was younger and I never could find it. So that was definitely the main inspiration for writing that book, because that book deals with a girl who has really hairy arms and she's starting to notice hair on her face. And that was definitely something that I dealt with growing up. So I knew I wanted to write a book about a girl who was really hairy. And it's funny because I thought maybe I was the only one who wanted that book. But when I wrote it, there have been so many girls and boys who have said to me, "Thank you for writing this. I thought I was the only one." So that was a really fun thing to discover after I wrote that book. But my other 2 books, Honeybees and Frenemies, and then my latest book, they definitely have little hints of things that happened to me when I was younger, like Honeybees and Frenemies. The town I grew up in had a honey festival every summer. And when I was in 2nd grade, I was in the festival and I was Little Miss Honeybee. So it started off as like kind of this funny, like, oh, I remember this. And the idea just grew from there. Most of the other stuff that happens in that book didn't really happen to me, but some of it did. And then my latest book, the character Will is actually based off my cousin. And there was a summer when my cousins started liking other girls, and it was just getting like, it just put this weird, thing in our friendship that I had to figure out. So definitely my books have little seeds of real life things that happened, but they also kind of take on their own mind as I'm writing them. And yeah, I end up writing things that didn't really happen, but they're inspired by things that did happen.
That actually sounds amazing because I've heard this from many other authors as well, that the inspiration from your own experiences as well as other people's experiences, what you hear, they really help in shaping your book, regardless of whether it's non-fiction or fiction.
Yeah, definitely.
So on to our next question. How did you come up with your book title?
Oh, well, that's a good question because I don't. I think Khullar's Mustache, that's the only title that I have come up with myself. And that one was kind of a working title. I thought maybe they would change it, but everyone seemed to like it. Honeybees and Frenemies, I had no idea what that book was going to be called. Honestly, when I was writing it, I just kept calling it the Bee Book Because I didn't know what to call it. And it was actually my editor and the team at the publishing house, Simon and Schuster. They all sat down and they came up with it, and they were like, "Hey, what about this?" And I was like, "Okay, that sounds great." And then the same, Best Friends Bikinis and Other Summer Catastrophes. I tried very hard to write a list of titles. I asked friends, I asked my kids, and then my agent and I tried to figure it out. And again, it ended up just being my editor and agent. They came up with this. I cannot take any credit for the title.
That's amazing. I mean, like, it doesn't matter whether you chose the title or someone else did, but whatever your title was, I guess your title really helped intrigue people into reading it. Because I mean, even though people say don't judge a book by its cover, I still think that people still do that.
Oh, for sure, definitely. I do.
I for one do as well, because
yeah,
the cover is kind of like what tells you. So you should always be like careful on what you choose for your cover, because you do not want to accidentally put something on the cover which is actually not there in the book, or not show it too much, which makes it seem as a lot. Like, for example, if it's like a adventure book, but then you show a lot of pictures of just girls and boys and stuff like that and friends on there, then people would think it might be a friendship story instead of an adventure story. Even though like friends could go on adventures, but it just may not seem like that if there are not too many adventure elements on the page. Yeah, that's why I'm really glad somebody else does the cover and everyone else has figured out the titles for me. It takes a lot of pressure off, for sure. Yeah, because as a writer, you need to have a team behind you so that you can just focus on writing and they can just do the other stuff. Because focusing on every single thing would just be hard to get a good quality work out to the readers.
I agree.
Now on to our next question. I feel like this is a very interesting question personally, because every person I've ever asked this to or plan on asking this to has given a different answer. So the question is, if you could meet your characters, what would you say to them?
Ooh, that is such an interesting question. I immediately think of Karma from my first book, from Khullar's Mustache. And honestly, it's funny because I thought I was kind of writing myself, but like a better version of myself, because I was Harry growing up and people would say things and I was super self-conscious. I wasn't as brave and strong as Karma. And it's funny because even when I was writing that book, I remember thinking like, should she be stronger? Should she do this? Or should I have her, be more shy, like how people might really be if they weren't in this situation? And it was kind of a hard balance of, I didn't want her to be too quiet, but I didn't want her to be too confident. She needed to kind of grow into that. But it's really funny because so many people talk about, wow, she is such a strong character. Wow, she is so brave, and all these words that I'm like, oh, maybe I was too when I was younger. I just didn't think I was. So I think I would say to Karma, like, keep it up, like keep being strong and keep, being you, and, and who cares, right? Who cares what other people think? And just keep being you, keep being a good person. Yeah, I definitely would want to talk to Karma and have a long, like, hot chocolate or something with her.
That sounds great. I feel like you're meeting your own character, meeting your creations. Like, I feel like characters kind of like children. Like, your creation, which you created. So in a way, they're like your kids, second kids, right?
Yeah.
So like how you want the best for your kid, in like, especially if you have children and in the real life, you know how to like look out for them and help them out when they're in need, or even just help them out in general, right? So your characters, giving them the nourishment or giving them that confidence that what they're doing is great, or what they're doing is perfect for who they are and they do not have to change or just giving them like these nice little pieces of advice for them to use, even though you know that this character may not be actually out there in the actual world, it's still real in the book.
Yes, yeah.
And just asking those questions or answering those questions for your characters helps bring out your character out into the real world and make it feel more realistic.
Yeah, so then when you meet, like I've met students who identify with characters, and so you are like, oh, you are a real person, right? Like, yeah, they do become real when someone reads them and identifies with them.
Talking about this, I just thought of a question, which is, how do you write like realistic? How do you manage to create realistic characters? I mean, we just talked about how asking questions can help build them, but do you like make a character sketch? Like, how do you know how they look?
Wow. I actually never have a clear picture of physically how they look, but definitely their voice comes to me very strong. Each of my 3 books that have been published, I think the first kind of few paragraphs have not changed much from the first time I sat down to write it. I definitely get a very strong impression of who this character is just from their voice. So I actually really focus on the emotional side of my character and what they're going to go through and what they're thinking and feeling. And I get really deep into that, but I often don't have a great idea of what they look like. I mean, I know I have to put descriptions in the story about like if their hair is frizzy, if it's dark, or you know, whatever, their color of their eyes I might have to mention, or if they're tall or skinny, right? These things do come up, but it's always very fuzzy to me, which I know some people do like have like pictures in their head of like, oh, they're gonna look like this person or that person. I don't really. I really dig deep into what they feel like. And honestly, I kind of do that by just like really remembering like what it felt like for me. I have like a vivid memory of certain moments in my life, and I just try to dig into that and be like, ooh, I remember it feeling like this. And then I just try to dig deeper in that.
Yeah, I think that what you just said was amazing and perfect, because you don't really need to have like you don't need to know how they look. Just by writing, like just using the scenery or the imagery of how you think of your character in your mind or picture them in your mind, you automatically settle this image. So like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like every reader, when they read the description, they imagine different people in their head.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I think that just because everyone has their own kind of imagination, some people might see the character differently. Like some people might see them as a bold person, whereas some other one person might see them as shy, depending on what their definition is, what they think the definition is of bold and shy, or what the definition is of being fearless and scared.
No, I was just going to say, it's funny that we're talking about this because actually it's only my first book, Khullar's Mustache, that has the character's face on the cover. And even that is very like kind of cartoonish looking. So again, you don't, because I was kind of afraid of that, like, oh no, what are they going to make her look like? What if it's not what I think she looks like, you know? But actually I really loved that because it was more about her expression. It's just her eyes and this mustache. But thankfully, my other 2 books, it's very like vague, right? You can't really see a face. Even this 3rd book, it's just their legs in the water. So I kind of like that mystery of, yeah, it can be whatever you think, right? Which is nice.
Actually, that just reminded me of another thing. All of your covers, or every cover, like people portray them differently. Like, let's say like a book doesn't have a blurb, because I mean they do have it in at least in like the jacket of the book. But if they don't, you can just see the book, and different people would think of them differently. Like, for example, your latest book, as you said, they have pictures of feet in the water. Someone might think that it may, obviously, by seeing the colors, if it's yellow or blue, you can match them up and think maybe it's a summer book, which it is.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some other people might think it's sunny and it rained as well or something, or maybe their legs are in a puddle or some kind of rocky area. And they could like portray the magic of reading and writing is that when you read a book or see a book cover, you are like thrown into a new world, right? So you just imagine whatever you imagine just comes to the page. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
My last and final question for you is, what advice would you give to younger writers?
I would just say, like, find people who also like to write. It's not easy to do by yourself. And I think, Anika, you probably know this because you do write. It's really important to surround yourself with people who at least like reading, even if they don't like writing, because I think they kind of go hand in hand, reading and writing. And I used to write a lot as a kid, and I had some great teachers who encouraged me and friends who were always like, are you going to get this published? You should get this published. You know, like people who believed in what I was doing. And then as I got older, finding people who also are writing, who are also on this journey, because it's not an easy journey. And there are definitely days you're like, what am I doing? Like, does anyone care? Is anyone going to read this? I don't know. Or even when the book is out, like, is anyone going to buy this? Like, it can be very up and down. So I think just surrounding yourself with people who like books is always a good thing, no matter what.
Yeah, this is great advice, because every person or every author I've interviewed has different feedback. Like they have the same feedback sometimes, but like I love the way each person has their own feedback, and your feedback of like surrounding yourself with positive people will motivate you and like support your dreams is a great thing. And also having like this community to surround you in is a great idea, because you have someone to share your work with, gain feedback, and get that motivation that you can do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Especially in the time when you're like, you don't know, like how you said, sometimes you have the feeling where you don't know whether what you're doing is correct or whether you want to quit. In that time, these people help you the most. They boost your confidence, tell you, keep going. We want to see the book out there in the world as soon as possible.
Right. I mean, it's funny. Just yesterday, my daughter and I went to a bookstore and they didn't have my latest book there. And I was like, oh, like, ouch, this hurts. And then I was like, oh no, I came home and I'm a bit sad. And I got a text from a writing friend who just finished reading my latest book. And she just was like, this was so great. And I put a review on Amazon. Thank you for writing this. You're so good at this and this. And I was like, thank you. I needed that. Like, you don't know how badly I needed to hear that. So yes, they do help you keep going.
Yep. So anyways, that's the end of the episode. I had a great time talking to you, and I hope everyone out there who was listening to this episode loves this as much as I did and learned something new. Anyways, stay tuned for new episodes every Sundays. Thank you guys. Have a great day.